What in the world is this guy talking about? That is not a sample list anymore. At all. If it was, it probably was in the beginning. That demon that no one will believe me about. Now, what's weird? Okay, that's an understatement. There's a couple things weird about this. And this episode's gonna go long. I'm sorry, it's the end of the season. And I love this story. That demon that no one will believe me about. The two X's are in regard to the demon. But he hates it less than Mary? On your website where you're trying to sell me a therapy, if I was looking online for a therapist, and the therapist ad is like, we handle, marital counseling, adoption stuff, stress, demonic activity, I'd be like, whoa, you just can't slide that in there. Like, that's pretty bold to put that out right away. He doesn't like Mary a lot. He kind of doesn't like James. He kind of doesn't like the demon. And the fact that he added that no one will believe me about tells me that he's been walking around telling people about a demon and nobody believes him. He could have just put the demonic forces around me, or he could have just put a demon, and that would have been weird too. But the fact that we have that qualifier, it's not just a demon. It's a demon that no one believes him about. That's so weird. This guy must be telling people he sees a demon, and they're like, what? And he's like adding X's to their names. Number 4, this is where I think it's not examples anymore. So we had Mary, James, the demon no one will believe me about. Number 4, and I'm not going to get into why this is on here. Uncle Frank, 3 X's. Uncle Frank is higher on the list than the demon that no one will believe him about. 3 X's on Uncle Frank. Next on the list is God, 2 X's. Weird. And after that, Mother. It's very formal. Mother, 2 X's. And then the church group, single X. Now, I'm going to assume that the church group gets an X because they don't believe him about the demon that's floating around him. And then there's a few other ones after that. Josie, that nasty guy in the corner store, Ann and George. And oddly enough, George has 1 X and a question mark next to it. So is he thinking about removing the X or adding an X? Don't do this, guys. This is real dangerous to write a list like this. Now, he gives us a note. He actually says note on this part. And I can't make heads or tails of this. Note that you are addressing the hostile side of the person as he, she appears to you. Okay, so if I want these negative feelings to go away, I'm imagining their hostility towards me. And that's fair enough. But then we didn't need the example. For example, if you are a guy and you are addressing a girl you used to know who gave you trouble, do the creative bit with her acting hostile to you. Should be a period there, right? That should be the end of the sentence, right? He's made his point, but it doesn't. He doesn't end there. He says, the stuff about the girl, do the creative bit with her acting hostile to you, comma, not with her smiling and taking her clothes off. So he's yawning, rubbing himself. He's trying to picture this girl being hostile to him. Does he sometimes imagine her taking her clothes off? Would you, if you were, that totally boggled my mind. I'm like, I already don't know where we're at in this yawn therapy. And now he's telling us, he's giving us a note that I never would have thought of. Yawning and rubbing yourself and imagining someone you hate taking their clothes off. I guess, maybe, if you had a fetish for yawning. That I was like, why add that part? You made your point. That seems to be very common here. He'll make a relatively, interesting thing about, visualization. Then he's like, touch your chair. He also said this later on the website. He said, if you do this therapy correctly, the next time you see that person, you may want to give them a big old hug. Because it's, totally discharged all your negative energy. Maybe. I don't know. Probably not. If they didn't believe the demon existed yesterday and you do the yawn therapy, they're still not going to believe the demon existed today. I don't think that's going to change much, but he was saying that by discharging all this negative energy, you get over it. He also has the same process. We went over the people relief. This is the places relief. You do the same process with the location. You imagine it, you yawn, you rub yourself, and you think about how it was hostile to you. You're hoping to discharge that energy. Guess what the number one place is? And this is where I was like, the first one when he was like, oh, I was beaten up at school. I was thinking, that could just be an example. It's a little weird. It's a little weird to go that. Most people would say if you're making it for modern people or, older people, you'd say trouble at work, marital trouble, stuff like that. That's stuff that older people can deal with or can relate to more than being beaten up in school. So at first I was like, well, maybe there's just a one-off thing. When he does his locations, his first location is school, 3X. So he hates it more than the demon that no one will believe him about. His most hated location is school, tied with school. And it wasn't like a particular school, it was just school in general, 3Xs. He had one other location that has 3Xs. The parking lot where I got mugged. Now, I don't think that's an example at all. I think it was a place where he actually got mugged and he puts it on par with school. 3Xs for the parking lot where I got mugged. We got 2Xs for my first workplace. So it seems like he has some hostile energy from his youth, which is kind of sad. I think there's other workable therapies out there that he could take advantage of other than just yawning in your chair. My first workplace got 2Xs. Dental office got 2Xs. Okay. But then he has 3 other locations. He has the IRS office. It's very stressful to people. Hospital. That's fair enough. I can see people have bad experience with that. Larry's gym. Larry's gym got an X. Out of all the locations that this man has wandered through his life, Larry's gym. I don't know what happened there. I don't know when it happened. I don't want to know what happened at Larry's gym. That puts the gym, Larry's gym, on par. Think about this. Larry's gym, whatever happened there, is on par, on the same level as an IRS office and a hospital where people get sick and die. That's how much he hates Larry's gym. When you go to a hospital, it either means that you're having a really bad time or someone you know is having a really bad time. IRS, again, if you're in the office, you're not having the best month. But what could possibly go wrong at Larry's gym that puts it on the level of the hospital? Unless he ended up in the hospital from Larry's gym, I don't want to know. I don't want to know what happened. And when somebody's really into visualization, they tend to go back to the classics. I've talked about this, and I've actually recommended it personally to people as well. The Science of Getting Rich is the best visualization book I've ever read. It was actually the first visualization book I ever read. And since then, I've read other ones, and they're not as good. The Science of Getting Rich was written in the late 1800s by a minister. His name was Wallace Wattles, and oddly enough, he changed his name to that. That wasn't his birth name. He wanted the name Wallace Wattles. And I might actually do a reading of that book sometime, and just having it as a little audiobook podcast, whatever, because it's public domain. It's a great book. But that is the kind of the granddaddy of it. But there's another book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which again is a lot about visualization. Now, both The Science of Getting Rich and Think and Grow Rich, and Think and Grow Rich is based on Science of Getting Rich, but it's about visualization and hard work. Same thing with bodybuilding. You have to visualize yourself getting buff, but you got to put in the time too. That's what a lot of stuff like The Secret leaves out. You got to work really hard. Like I said on a previous podcast, if I visualize being a successful podcaster, which oddly enough, I haven't been doing much of lately. I kind of have lost that. I need to get back into that. And I think the show's... Well, I think also I'm just getting burned out. And that's why it's good to take the break, but... Where was I going with that? If I just visualize being a successful podcaster, having a lot of listeners and getting the great listener feedback that I do, but never recorded a podcast, it wouldn't work. You got to do both. You have to do both. Otherwise, you're just recording a podcast and no one's listening. It's really weird, and I believe it, but, skeptical. It's fine. Where am I going with this? Well, Napoleon Hill's Think or Grow Rich, I believe, is also public domain at this time. I think it was written in like the 20s. Paul Adams wrote Yawn and Grow Rich. Yawn. He wrote a book on par with Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, one of the leading self-starting business books. Well, kinda. He took a copy of Think and Grow Rich and just entered in text in blue his thoughts about yawning. He just adds yawning the whole time. Oh, do this part you just read, but yawn. The book's a mess. It's unreadable. It's absolutely unreadable. Because you read maybe 2 sentences of what Napoleon Hill wrote that have stood the test of time, and then in blue underneath it, it's like, yeah, just rub your chair and yawn. That is a bastardization of what he wrote. I honestly, at the point when I was reading Yawn and Grow Rich, I was starting to pull my hair out. I was really starting to lose patience with this guy. His websites are a mess. His websites are classic HTML, 3-column. So you, on one side, to say they're not updated for mobile browsers is an understatement. One side of the screen, probably about like maybe about a good 2 inches of it, is reader testimonials of whatever nonsense he's talking about. And then he has maybe about 5 or 6 inches of crammed in text. And then the remaining 3 inches on the right side of the screen, so you have it on the left side and right side, 3 columns, are more testimonials from people, which I can almost guarantee are trolls. Being, you know what, I yawned and my petunias started to grow. Thanks, Paul. I can almost guarantee that they're trolls. Either a lot of people really, really like yawning, or people are messing with them at this point. The reason why this is ridiculous, it's ridiculous on the face of it, but when he's trying to sell it as some sort of therapy, I think it can be dangerous, because I think a lot of people are suffering with stuff, and this isn't going to help. This isn't going to help anybody. This isn't going to help him. It's not, but we'll go into him further when we talk about the food replicator, but I don't think it'll help anyone else. But I will say this. The time that I spent on this guy's websites, and again, he has a lot of them, I was very entertained and very happy, and I laughed a lot. So, Paul Adams, thank you for that. You did brighten my day. I didn't yawn. I didn't sigh. I didn't rub stuff. But I had a good laugh. A little bit at your expense. Well, a lot at your expense, but I truly hope that as we go into Season 4, you continue to be healthy and have a long life. And the reason why I say that while I'm laughing is because last I saw, he's still eating food out of his magical food replicator, and he's losing weight, and he's not doing too good. This is on his latest blog. So, but we will come back to the food replicator next season. We'll see his other invention of how to take 2 tin cans, a string, a few other little instruments that in no way are used for food preparation, and how to take the essence of food from one can to the other. You don't eat the moldy food, you eat this new substance that appears. So yeah, we got a lot more craziness coming up next season, and we're going to, if you got any requests, send them in, because I'm prepping request week. That's how we're going to come back with Season 4. I already got a ton of requests, and I know which ones, I know for the most part which ones I'm going to do. But if you got some, send them over. Dead Rabbit, you know the stuff. Let me start the exit here. Go ahead and cue music right now. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be your email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. Twitter is @JasonO'Carpenter. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. I'm glad you listened to Seasons 1, 2, and 3. We're going to be starting Season 4 soon. Have a great weekend, guys. Okay, so that was You Are the Yawn Machine. Our time spent with Paul Adams. Let's take a look at this episode here. Let's kind of break it down in order. I'll get to the Paul Adams stuff. And again, I want to thank Rage Cat for recommending this episode. You know what's funny is that since I've opened it up to have Patreon suggest their episodes, their favorite episodes to be included in the Classics Week, I've noticed a trend. A lot of them are at the end of this season, when I'm completely burned out. I'm completely done with the show. The last 15